How's it going, everyone? We're starting off a new video series here called Does It Bloom? And it's just going to be a set review of cards that I think will be playable or maybe not playable, just cards that have garnered some discussion from the new set that might or might not see play in Black Green Pioneer. So I'm just going to go over my initial thoughts and comments of cards that are going to be coming out from the new set, Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Again, this is specifically for Black Green Pioneer. No talk about Modern because I think Pioneer is going to be have it's such a small card pool. This is going to be have the set that has a format that has the most impact from this new set. So right off the bat, we're going to start off with the first card that I'm the most excited about. It is Sentinel of the Nameless City. This card is a 2 mana, 1 green, so 3 mana total. For a Merfolk Warrior Scout, 3/4 Vigilance. When it ETBs or attacks, it creates a map token. So for those who haven't seen any of the spoilers, the map token is an artifact where you pay 1 and sacrifice the map token, and then target creature explores. So what that does is you look at the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it into your hand. If it's a non-land, you can put it into the graveyard or put it back on top. And if it's a non-land card, your creature gets a +1/+1 counter. So this card does a lot. First off, like a 3 mana 3/4 is a really relevant body because it survives the 1 mana burn spell from is it Phoenix, Fiery Temper. The 3 mana, 3 power is also relevant because it trades up to all the other 3 drops like Bone Crusher Giant, Graveyard Trespasser, and then the 4 toughness is really clutch because it can block stuff like Graveyard Trespasser. It can block Blood Tithe Harvester. Vigilance is huge. This is a card that, for those who are familiar with, when I was playing Briarbridge Tracker, where it was a 3 mana 4/3. The Vigilance is very very clutch. There's a lot of like board states, in Pioneer where the Pioneer is a very battlefield centric format. So like where you just have a card that can block and attack is actually really really important text actually, especially in a format where like in a deck where we're trying to like turn the corner, and a card that can play offense and defense is clutch. So now, the map token is also very, very good because it is potential card advantage. When you're drawing a land, that might not be a source of card advantage that you necessarily want in the late game, but it's still nice to be able to either A, draw that card so you don't draw the land the following turn, or B, you could filter the top card. Let's say you see a Thoughtseize on the top of the deck. You just mill into your graveyard and you're just filtering the top card. And on top of that, you also grow the team. So like turning this into a 4/5, very clutch. Because now, like when you're on the play, your opponent like plays a Bone Crusher Giant, for example. You attack, have a 4/5, and you can attack through a Bone Crusher Giant. That's like really, really clutch. And then most importantly, the fact that it ETBs or attack, so you can constantly make multiple map tokens. But on top of that, it's a way to trigger revolt. And I think that's the thing about playing Golgari in Pioneer is the fact that you don't have many revolt triggers. Like we're starting to play like Field of Ruin, we're exploring that, and it's been very, very good. So like when you look at stuff in Rakdos where they have Blood Tithe Harvester or Fable the Mirror Breaker, they make blood tokens, they make treasure tokens. They have resources or ways to trigger revolt, on a whim. And when Black Green Rock, the only real way you can really trigger revolt is Field of Ruin. There's other stuff like Jewel Thief where you can make a treasure token, but like the power level isn't quite there. So just having a key way to generate map tokens or a way to trigger a vault, like this card does a lot. First of all, like, so to kind of sum it up, like it has a relevant body, has a relevant keyword Vigilance, generates a lot of value because it ETBs and attacks to make a map token, and it triggers a vault. It does a lot. So I'm really really excited to try this card. The jury's still out on how many copies you want. Like the Discord ranges from like a full playset. I'm gonna start with 3, kind of see how it goes from there, because like the 3th drop slot in the mid range most decks in Pioneer is just super congested, right? We have Lily on the Veil, Graveyard Trespasser, Glissa now, and there's like this other, and like these are the top 3 drops that I personally play, and it pushes off like a lot of other good three drops like Ren and Realm Breaker, like Briar Betrayer doesn't play anymore. So it'd be interesting to see like is this card as good in practice than it is on paper, and if it is, then what is the correct number? So I'm gonna be very very excited to explore this card, and how well it performs, because this is a really 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 powerful tool that Golgari has access to now. The next card that I talk about is Preacher of the Schism. It's another 3-drop. Again, competing with that that very very congested 3-drop slot. But this is a 2 to black, 2/4 Death Touch. So it's another big butt creature with a relevant keyword. So Death Touch is great because it just trades up no matter how big the opposing creature is. So it has attack triggers. So it's not like Glissa where you need to connect with Glissa. Preacher of the Schism has attack triggers. So when you attack, the player, so when it attacks the player with the most life or tied for the most life, you create a 1/1 vampire with lifelink. Then, if you attack and if you have the most life or tied with the most life, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. So there is a world where if it's tied, you're in both you and your opponent's life total is the same. You actually get both triggers. So this is kind of cool. Where I feel like this card seems a little underwhelming at first, but this is something that I definitely want to try in practice, because this card is the type of card where it's like great while you're ahead and great while you're behind, and that's a key characteristic as to why I love Glissa, because Glissa is a card where it's really great. You're ahead, you attack, you're forcing your opponent in the abyss. If it goes through, you draw a card, you destroy an enchantment. You can move counters off a planeswalker. It's really clutch. This is kind of the same thing where you can be behind and you can still just attack with this 2/4 Death Toucher. So like your opponent probably is like really reluctant to block, and then you just generate a 1/1 with lifelink, so to kind of help you crawl back and just generate chum blockers, keeps you kind of an aggressive. It's kind of like pseudo vigilance, right? Then when you're ahead, you also just like, it's kind of better than Glist in the sense like if you're ahead already, you just draw off the bat from the attack. So that is actually kind of nice. So again, this is a card where I'm just debatable if it's better than Glissa. There's going to be situations where it's better than Glissa because obviously when you're behind, you can attack and still generate value in a sense. There's gonna be times where Glissa just gets stonewalled, but this card just continues to draw a card and lose 1 life. That being said, Glissa is a card that just stonewalls your opponent, and you don't have to like chump with it in a sense. You don't have to trade with your opponent creature. The first strike and Death Touch on Glissa is very very clutch, where it always wins the combat, right? So I can see pros and cons with both, but again, this is a card that is, I think, just kind of flying under the radar, where I think this card might be better in practice than it is on paper, at least initially. It just has a lot of text, and the fact that it triggers off just only attacking is very very clutch. The next card is Bitter Triumph, 1 in a black instant. So it destroys a target creature or planeswalker, but you have to pay an additional cost. You either discard a card or pay 3 life. So there's a lot of 2-mana removal spells in the format. Power Word Kill, Go for the Throat, Infernal Grasp. A lot of cards that have drawbacks, right? Like Power Word Kill. If there's a lot of angels in your meta, then the card's just essentially blank. Go for the Throat doesn't tag, Esika's Chariot or Sky Sovereign. Infernal Grasp, you pay I think 2 life, if I remember correctly. So this is a card that's kind of like a lateral move, maybe slightly better. It's strictly better just because it can tag a planeswalker. I think that's what's clutch. So when you're against, mono green and you're holding like a Noxious Grasp, it's awkward because you could try to tag a Kiora, sure, but can't tag a Karn, and that could make or break you. And I think that's the thing about playing this mid-range deck, is where if you have a removal spot that doesn't kill your opponent's creatures, you lose the game, because that's the whole point of it, because you essentially have a dead card in your hand, your opponent has a threat that you can't answer, you lose, right? So it's just a matter of this drawback, right? Like I feel like the other removal spells that I just mentioned, growth of throw, power will kill. They have like a conditional aspect, right? Like like I was playing a game earlier where like a opponent slammed a torrential gear Hulk, and I had to go with the thumb in my hand, and it's like I just died of this 5/6. This is where more often than not, you're just gonna pay the 3 life, and that 3 life can matter. So. In the deck where we have 4 Mosswood Dread Knights, that card is, as we learned, is just a staple in Pioneer Black and Rock. Life is a resource, but it's one of those things where when you are drawing a card off Dread Whispers or Mosswood Dread Knight, we're drawing a card off Glissa. We have Thoughtseize, and then we have Castle Lockthwain. Our life total ends up running out, right? There's plenty of games, with how Battlefield trying to check the format is like your life total actually does matter in some spots. So, and I would say, of course, the card always matters more. But this is where it'll be interesting to see how many copies you want to run. There's an argument where like if there isn't much mono white in the meta, I'm a firm believer like 2 Noxious Grasps. So like, is this better than a Noxious Grasp in the sideboard? Making that clean swap, you're probably better against like control maybe. If they're playing like Narset or something, that's like not a white planeswalker that doesn't get tagged by Noxious Grasp. So it'll be interesting to see how this card fares and where the pieces kind of fall with this card, because this again, being able to tag a creature into a planeswalker is clutch. So that being said, it's one of those things where it's this is where I'm a huge fan of Assassin's Trophy. Assassin's Trophy, there is no additional cost. There is no um like a filter or like a clause to your removal spell, right? It's a catch all, and that's why I love Assassin's Trophy. So this is why if you're already playing Assassin's Trophy, I don't think you play this over Assassin's Trophy. I think this is a card that maybe you play one of in the main. Maybe it's a sideboard card depending on if there's a lot of mono green, like I mentioned, and like how often do you really tag a Karn or like a boat versus like a Noxious Grasp, right? So at the end of the day, I think this is a card at minimum. It's good to have like in your toolbox as a card, just to where you have your options, right? Like I said, you have Power Kill, Go for the Throat, Infernal Grasp, and now you have Bitter Triumph. It's just nice to have these options and just have this have the physical cardboard. And if you're in a meta where the meta shifts where this card becomes better than the other 3, this is where you want to have it sleeved up. So again, like this is a card that's nice to have access to. I don't think this replaces anything in the main. It might be a cyber player, but just good to have. Next up is Jadelight Spelunker. It's X and a green. It's a Merfolk Scout where it enters the battlefield, explores X times. So again, Explorer, if I made it confusing, I'm just going to read the reminder text. You reveal that, so when I mentioned like Sentinel, the Nameless City, like I might have explained it wrong, but you reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land, you put it into your hand. Otherwise, if it's a non-land, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature, and then you can put that back on top or put it into your graveyard. So this card is really, really interesting. This is where it's just a late game really cool card because you can essentially just like go through your deck. So like, let's say you have like 5 mana and you explore for 4. You could either just draw the lands up to your hand, or you could just like see a card they like on top, put 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 on top, and you get like a 4/4. There's probably sometimes in the middle where you can draw a land, and then you see a card, you mill it, and then you see another land. Like there's probably like a hybrid of it, right? I just like how this card scales up, and then you could also just play it as a 2 mana 1/1 with Explore 1. Like this card, just like at the base rate for 2 mana, just going 2 mana 1/1 Explore, try to dig for a land or scribe for it, is so good because when you do 2 mana for it, right? You can either 2 mana 1/1 if it's a land, you draw a card, and you essentially have like an Elvish Visionary, right? Or if you see a spell, you mill it to the bottom or mill it to the graveyard, sorry, or draw, or just put it back on top. Then you have a 2/2 bear that you scryed one. That's the base minimum on this card, and it only gets better the bigger the X is. So this card is really really exciting. I'm gonna try 2 copies of this card just to see how it fares. I think on paper, maybe like I'm really really excited about this card. I don't know how good it is in practice, but I don't know. This is the type of card that really excites me. That card that like it's a 2 drop technically, but it could also be like a 7 drop that's huge and can just generate a lot of value or draw a bunch of cards. And I didn't mention earlier with the removal spell I mentioned a second ago. With Bitter Triumph. Now that you have Jadelight Spelunker and Sentinel in the Nameless City where you're exploring a couple of times, I do want to mention that with that black removal spell, it might get better because if you're just putting a bunch of lands in hand, you have extra fodder to discard. So that's where the black removal spell, Bitter Triumph, may actually get better in combination with these 2 cards. It's still a little awkward, Liliana, because you're still you're kind of pressuring yourself. So like, Bitter Triumph becomes a worse card if you're like lacking resources in that department. So like if you're playing like Liliana, this might not be the best card, but if you're running a deck where you aren't running Liliana, I think Bitter Triumph might be good, especially if you're playing a deck without Liliana but are playing like like Splunkers in a full playset of Sentinel of the Nameless City, for example. So I'm excited to try this card. I'm excited to try Sentinel of the Nameless City, and we'll see how it goes. The last 2 cards I want to talk about are a couple 5 drops. I will not be able to pronounce these names, but they're the respective black green gods. So let's start with the green one first. Sorry, it's a 5-mana 6/5 to trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library, and then you put a creature card and or a land card from among them onto the battlefield. Then put the rest on the bottom in random order. And then when it dies, it turns into a land. So the black one is also 5 mana, but it's a 4/4 flying life leak. When it attacks, each opponent discards a card. For each opponent who can't, you draw a card. And then when an opponent discards a land card, you create a 1/1 bat. And then when it dies, it comes back as a land. So I'm going to show the lands in the next slide here. It's going to cover the art here. So like this is where it costs 3 mana to transform the land back into the threat. For the green side, if you control 10 or more permanents, you can transform it. For the black one, if a player has 1 or few cards in hand, then you can transform it then. So this is where it's like a grindy 5-drop, like kind of like like the generic, good stuff card there that you kind of board in, and it's like slam dunking against the mid-range matchups, right? Of course, both would be really good against Rakdos because you just come back and then it never essentially really dies, unless they have Misery Shadow. Then you're gonna be really sad. But in a sense, I think these cards are kind of the same. That's why I have them on the same slide. It is nice that they have the potential to be a little bit more resilient. So like I was gonna compare this to like Elder Gargaroth, right? Elder Gargaroth is a 5-mana 6/6 or 3 each, and when it attacks or blocks, you can make a 3/3, or you gain life, or you draw a card. Like it does so much. This is kind of the same thing, right? Where like when you attack with a black one, your opponent discards a card, you make a 1/1. When you attack with the green one, you can put a creature from your top of your library onto the battlefield. Like it's just generic 5-drops that gain value. And this is where these two probably have a slight edge against Rakdos, just because of the fact that they're starting to run like Go for the Throats in the main, and they have like access to Dreadbore, so they can easily answer like Elder Gargaroth, honestly. So this is where have it being a little bit more resilient, turning into a land if it does happen to die, is kind of nice. It's just one of those things where these type of cards just trigger when they die to really gain that value, and then the type of cards that are supposed to be good in the mid-range matchups, like these cards, just actually don't line up well against control because they're just so clunky. You just task into counterspell mana, and then when you actually resolve them, the Gargaroth and these 2 cards, the control decks are just running a lot of exile effects now. So like when you say these cards are good in the grindy matchups, they are and they aren't. And I think that's like my quarrel for like these 5 drops is because like they're good against Rakdos, and that's kind of it. Like they're not good against control, so like they're not truly good against the grindy matchups, right? And that's where I would rather run like a Bank Buster, extra Bank Buster inside, or like run and Realm Breaker, where like run and Realm Breaker is really good against control. It's a 3 drop. It doesn't get tagged against their spot removal like March or Wandering Emperor. And since it's a 3 drop, it's easy to protect. Like you can easily go like turn 4 duress plus Ren and Realm Breaker, and that's why I'm more of a fan of those type of cards, or even just going like on turn 3 duress plus Record or Bank Buster. So I don't think Pioneer like you can play these 5 drops. I like if you want, if that's kind of your play style. I think just personally for me, I'd rather just err on the side of like the cheaper end cards, because I think that's a false stereotype of Pioneer where you can just slam these 5 drops and it's fine. Like that you can play 5 drops in Pioneer. Obviously we see the Big Teferi, Sky Sovereign, etc., etc. I think just in these like classic black green rock decks, I think I'd rather just have like a Ren and Roam Breaker or Record of Bank Buster instead of these 2 cards. And if my opponent slams this against me in the mirror, then so be it. The last card, I apologize after the last 2 cards was incorrect. This is the last card I'm going to be discussing today. This is a cute card that I just wanted to really touch on that kind of caught my eye that when they released the full set, I just wanted to touch on this real quick. Where it's a 2-mana artifact where it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Then you can craft with the creature. So you exile this artifact that's in play, as well as a creature that you control that's in your graveyard, or like something that you actually have in play. And then you can transform this card. And once you transform it at the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. I think this is a card where I just want to really, again, just briefly touch on it, where people are already running stuff like Shieldred's Edict, right? Where it's a 2-minute Edict effect. Granted, this doesn't tag Planeswalkers, so I think this is going to be a lot worse than it. But it's cool to see this type of card where you have a removal spell, and then like late in the game, this is a card that you can just flip and then just gain more value out of it. So this card kind of reminds me of like Virtue Persistence, where again it's a 2-mana removal spell, right? 2 mana, target gets -3, and then you gain 2 life. And then you can play it off the adventure side for 7 mana, and then it turns into like a Depth Turns Now, right? This card definitely doesn't have as high of a ceiling as that. But again, this is a cool card where maybe the meta turns into a less Planeswalker heavy meta. There's no Karn, there's no Kiora, and then this is a card where like at the end of the day, this is just a removal spell that can potentially have a late game implications, right? And that's why I'm a huge fan of Virtue Persistence, is because it's a generic 2-mana removal spell that it slots over like the 3rd decay or something, right? But just has that late game inevitability that just like essentially, not that it's free, because like that card specifically is a sorcery. This card's also gonna be sorcery speed, but it's like essentially free in the sense like it's just extra value and more mileage that you can get out of a slot. So like I'm not necessarily saying that this card is necessarily like playable. I think this is like just missing the mark, but this is the type of card that I'm a huge fan of. That's like this type of effect. So again, I just wanted to talk about it because this is a cool card that maybe it might sneak into play where you're in a grinding match and you flip it for 5 and you just start draining your opponent. This is a non-zero value card where like a non-zero like text, right? So that's the end of the video. These are the cards that I think had the most impact from last Caverns of Ixalan. If you're a huge fan of this type of content, please like the video, write a comment if you agree with my assessment, disagree with my assessments. If there's anything that you really want to see more out of the video, please let me know. Please give me feedback. Again, this is something new. And to kind of end the video, this is going to be where I'm going to be starting off as a starting point. Oops, sorry. So the new cards aren't on Moto yet, so I apologize in advance. But this is probably going to be familiar for those who watch the stream already. This is similar to the 75 that I've been jamming for the past like month and a half, 2 months. So again, I'm just making minimal changes just to accommodate the new cards. So the 2 cards I'm gonna try out first are gonna be Sentinel of the Nameless City, the 3-drop that I first talked about. That makes map tokens. This will be over the Fable of the Mirrorbreaker. And then Jadelight Spelunker, the X green card that explores X times. I'm going to try that over the Stonekill Serpent. So again, this is a list I'm going to be trying out. Hope you tune into the live stream or check out the YouTube video once it gets posted. Again, please give me feedback. If you like more of this content, please let me know. Again, like the video, post a comment, say that you want to see more of this. Again, like if you have any card that I missed personally, maybe type in the comment and I can respond if I want to. If you want some insights on those cards. But other than that, really appreciate all the support. Again, if you like this type of content, let me know, and I'll do this again for the next set. All right, take care.